But friends, last Sunday, we kind of stepped into this conversation, this series called Home for the Holidays. As we kind of enter into November, finally time, it's okay to start putting up decorations for Christmas, right? Finally, it's amazing, love it. Watching the Christmas movies in this holiday season, finally we have permission. It is socially acceptable to start doing those things. But now that we're entering into this season, we've been kind of in this conversation called Home for the Holidays, where we really are wanting to see our home be more like what God is dreaming for it to be. We really want to see God's kind of his joy, his peace, his purpose, all those things that he wants to see happen and transpire in our family units, but yet we don't feel it, especially at this time of the year. I mean, we know that he wants us to have this deep connection with our kids, with our brothers and sisters, with our parents. We understand that that is God's design for the family, but yet we don't feel that or experience it. And honestly, as we walk into this season, we experience even more dissatisfaction because we feel like at this time of the year it ought to be there, but it's not. We gather for Thanksgiving or for Christmas dinner, and we sit on the dining room table, and just there's so much dysfunction, there's disconnection. It's not how we envisioned it to be. And so we've been in this conversation, we started last week, about how do we see God's joy and his peace really be rooted and established, his love take place in our family. So we've been on this journey. We started last week looking at Abraham's story. This really well-known, popular person in the Bible. His story and his family tree is covered in 38 chapters in the book of Genesis. His family, him, and then his son Isaac, and then Isaac's son Jacob, and then Jacob's son Joseph. Their story makes up about 150 years, and it takes up a big chunk of the Bible, as a good portion of the Old Testament focuses on their story. And so as one of the most popular families in the Bible, and being in this family series, we wanted to kind of learn from them and kind of harvest what God may want to speak into our lives from their story. And so last week we kind of started in the same moment where Abraham's story starts in Genesis chapter 12, if you perhaps remember. Abraham is 75 years old, right? Wow, he's young, right? He's got lots of experience. He's still a young buck, right? At 75, of course. Tons of energy. Many of you feel like, oh man, I'm in my 60s. Listen, you're still young. Got lots of life to live and things to do. Abraham at 75 years old, God comes into his life and says, listen, I want you to take your wife and your nephew and pack up everything you have. And listen, I want to lead you to a whole new place of being. I want to lead you to a new land where you can start a new family legacy. And I'm going to bless you. And he makes all these incredible promises. We talked about those last week. And it's rich. It's powerful. But all those were built on Abraham, if you're willing to move, to leave where you are now, and to go to a different place. If you're willing to change, then I'm going to bestow all this blessing on you. We talked last week how the reality is if God's really going to lead our homes, he's going to chart a new course. He's going to lead us on a whole new direction. This journey of change, this journey of growing is hard, but it's so good. And so we learned that last week, and to kind of speed through Abraham's story a little bit to get to the part that I really want us to camp out at this morning. You see, after that moment in Genesis 12, when God gives him that instruction to go, and I'm going to lead you every day, he doesn't even tell him where he's going to go. He doesn't tell him the GPS, right? Imagine if you're going to a restaurant downtown or you're traveling out of state. Imagine like not knowing the address to type into your GPS, but just going, right? We're just trying to find it as we go, right? How terrifying that would be. But in this moment, he calls him. He says, I'm going to lead you day by day. It's powerful. So they head on this journey, and they, after some time of traveling, going hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles, they get to this place, and God just says, hey, listen, pause for a moment. Abraham, this is going to be the place. It's not going to be right now, but this right here, I want to give you a glimpse of the promise that is coming. This is going to be the land that one day your family will inherit. This will be yours someday, where your kids and your family tree will be rooted and established here in this place. And it's powerful. They don't yet claim that promise in that moment. They continue to move forward, and so in the story, as they see that promise, as God kind of reveals what's behind the curtain, they kind of start to feel disheartened, him and his wife, because they're old. They're older, I should say. They have more life experience, and yet they don't have any kids of their own. They think they hear this promise that God is going to bless them with all this land for their family, but yet they don't have any family behind them. And so they start to feel all this heartache inside of them, saying, God, we don't have any kids to pass this on to. And then God makes them a phenomenal promise that don't worry, in your old age, I'm going to bless you with the son. And if you're familiar with the story, Sarah laughs, like Abraham's wife. She hears that and she laughs. She's like, like hilarious. Like in my mind, as I read this story, I think she's got one of those snort laughs, like, right? Like she hears that, like, oh my goodness, like, God, are you crazy right now? Like, you realize how old I am? I can't have kids right now. Are you out of your mind? But God says, yes, I'm going to bless you with a son. And so 10 years go by. And they're waiting, nothing happens. And so they get creative. They say, listen, I'll tell you what, how about we kind of cheat God's promise a little bit? How about we just try to get, one of our servants, one of our maids, why don't we get her pregnant? That way she can have a son, and then that son can kind of be the one who inherits our family. So they go about that, which to us in our modern culture sounds crazy and ridiculous, but thousands of years ago in this time in the world, it was totally normal for them to do that. Especially a person of Abraham's prestige and wealth. Totally normal. And have a son. But yet God says, no, that wasn't the deal. The deal was that I would bring you a son through Sarah. And she laughs again, right? Sure enough, 10 more years go by, and all of a sudden, Sarah's pregnant. Wow. She's 90 years old. And they're back in the diaper scene. And she gives birth to a baby boy, and they name him Isaac. And then 37 years goes by. Isaac is 37, and Abraham is around 146 years old. Oh my goodness. And Sarah's 127, and in Genesis chapter 23, she passes away. And they've only ever had the one son. She passes away, and the whole chapter of chapter 23 is them celebrating her life. It's beautiful. I encourage you to read it. But in chapter 24 is this moment where Abraham speaks and he leads his family in a very particular way that I really want us to harvest some truth and some growth from this morning. Because now it's just Abraham in his old age and his one son, Isaac. And so I want us to dive into Genesis chapter 24. If you're going to use one of the Bibles that we have on the seats, that's on page 10. Very easy to flip to page 10, one of the white and blue Bibles. It's also going to be here on the screen, and it's also, of course, going to be in the YouVersion app that's on your phone. But I really want us to really lean in a couple of verses what's happening here in this moment. So Genesis chapter 24, verse 1, here we go. Abraham was now very old. Literally, this is right after they buried Sarah. Abraham was now very old, and the Lord had blessed him in every way. He said to the senior servant in his household, the one in charge of all that he had, put your hand under my thigh. I know many of us in our culture, what? Like, what is going on? This is a handshake. This is a, kind of spit in the hand. This is a pact that they're making, kind of deal that they're making in this moment. But put your hand under my thigh. I want you to swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I'm living. Remember, they had traveled to a whole new land. But will go to my country, back to where we came from, to my own relatives, and get a wife for my son Isaac. Verse 5. The servant asked him, what if the woman is unwilling to come back with me to this land? Then shall I take your son back to the country you came from? Make sure that you do not take my son back there, Abraham said. The Lord, the God of heaven, who brought me out of my father's household and my native land, and who spoke to me and promised me on oath, saying, to your offspring I will give this land. He will send his angel before you so that you can get a wife for my son from there. If the woman is unwilling to come back with you, then you will be released from this oath of mine. Only do not take my son back there. Verse 9. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of his master Abraham and swore an oath to him concerning this matter. we're going to stop reading right there. But the story continues to move forward and progresses, because the rest of the chapter is the servant. We don't really know his name. We don't know much about him. But he goes back to where Abraham and his family, back where their family tree was kind of planted, back in their home, their native land. And he goes back to that place trying to find a woman for Isaac. And he gets to that place and he begins praying. He begins praying and saying, God, lead me. And he sets up some criteria. God, I'm looking for a woman who's going to do this. I want to see this happen. I'm going to know that it's of you, that you're going to deliver this promise. And sure enough, all those things happen. The senior servant finds this woman named Rebecca and shares with her and her family about Isaac and Abraham, and she agrees to go back and marry him. And it's actually funny, at the very end of the chapter, I encourage you to read that as well. When Rebecca joins the servant back at home with Isaac, they kind of see each other, and instantly they just kind of fall in love. That's kind of a love story, right? The Notebook in this moment. They see each other, it's just like, oh, beautiful. They're doves and hearts floating in the air. It's perfect. But friends, what I want us to really press into this morning is that Abraham gave his servants these kind of two criteria of what to look for. He said, on one hand, I don't want this woman you find to be a daughter from one of the Canaanites. I don't want her to be from the people who are around us, because the people who are around us, they're not of God. They're not following God. They're disobeying him. They hate him. They're rebelling against him. Listen, if you find a woman that my son marries who is from here, she will surely lead him away from God. And then he sets up another criteria. He says, I don't want you to take Isaac back. I don't want him to walk away from this promise. He's going to go back and he's going to see a life that he never had, but he's going to see how comfortable and easy it is, and how perhaps maybe a little familiar it may be because it's in his blood, his DNA. But listen, don't let him go back, because if he goes back, he's going to walk away from what God is wanting to do in our family. And what's really rich is that God never tells Abraham to do this. Like, if you read through 23 and 24, even 25, listen, all those chapters, there's never a moment when God goes to Abraham and gives him this criteria, these guidelines to follow. Abraham just trusts that God's going to bring the right woman, but Abraham is the one who steps up and says, these are going to be the parameters. This is the type of woman that we're going to find. He doesn't reach in. He doesn't try to control or manipulate the situation. He allows God to work and provide and fulfill his promise. Abraham still steps up. He still chooses to put these guidelines in place. Friends, what I want us to lean into this morning in this conversation about seeing God lead our homes is it's so important for us to realize that when God leads our homes, he's calling us to be the one who stands up and defends it. Like, it's so important for us to realize that. And not just for parents. Understand, if you're a young adult and yet don't have your own family, understand that these are still things that God is calling you to do, to kind of put in these guardrails, these boundaries, these guidelines to create a blueprint for how and who your family will be and live. Listen, this is what God is calling us to do, to be like Abraham, to put up these guardrails, and understand guardrails are simply these invisible boundaries that we create that keep our family in line with God. But we've got to understand this, that Abraham didn't get this giant voice from a cloud from God in heaven telling him to do this. He simply knew that it was his responsibility as the father and leader of his home, that if he wanted to see his son carry forward the promise of God, if he wanted to see his son and his great-grandchildren and all the descendants after him, if he wanted to see them to be faithful and under the covering of God's blessing, then he's going to be intentional about creating these guardrails that will protect his home. He's the one who's going to put these in place to keep everyone safe. Frequently, whenever Aaron and I journey back up to Michigan every summer to say hey to family, we drive through the windy roads of the upstate in North Carolina, and we love that part of the whole drive. We are big road trip people, okay? Huge road. Anybody with us? Like, who loves just jump in the car, road trip? Woo, that's awesome. That's us. And I'm so grateful as we're driving through the mountains that those guardrails are in place. Because they're not there to control where our car goes, right? Like, they're not there to manipulate what direction we're heading in. They're there to keep us safe in case we are distracted or lose focus for a moment, to keep us away from any kind of catastrophic damage or failure. Friends, we need to understand that God is calling us, whether we're a student or a young adult out of the house, or if we're a parent with young kids, or a parent with teenagers, or a grandparent or a parent with kids out of the home. Listen, He's calling us. He wants us to stand up and put guardrails in place that defend and protect our family. And if we can just be done with being okay, like not just within our relationship with our kids, but with even our marriage, within our home, if we can just be done with being fine and being okay and say things are good, they're fine, they're how they've always been, they're as expected. If we can kind of tuck that away and chase after better and chase after healthy and thriving and happy. I mean, could you imagine that kind of deep connection with your spouse? Guardrails need to be set in stone. We want to see our students, our kids, live bold lives for Jesus. Listen, not just grow up and be good people, not just to do well in school, to not misbehave and to follow just directions and respect adults. If we want to see them not just do well in school and not just to not do drugs and not have sex before they're married, if we're going to go beyond that, go to the next level, listen, God is calling us to set guardrails in place that protect our children and our students, so that God can be thriving in their life, even as a 13, 14-year-old girl or boy. I mean, wouldn't it be amazing to see? Like, to see the Holy Spirit really grabbing a hold of your middle schooler or your high schooler and really use them to forward the kingdom. Wouldn't that be rich and powerful? Friends, we need to put guardrails in place. If we want to see a friendship and a relationship be sparked and kindled back together with our estranged adult children, then we need to put some guardrails in place that keep us safe in how we move forward, so that when we move forward, we stay in line with how God wants our family to be and be in our lives and how He wants to change us and use us. There are guardrails we need to put in place. If we're a grandparent in the room, we want to see our grandkids walk with Jesus and to be a strong young man when they grow up, and to be an amazing, confident young woman when she grows up. Listen, there are guardrails that we need to put in place. Even if they don't live with us, there's still things that we can do to help lead our homes to where God is wanting them to be. It will be hard. It will be different. But we need to walk forward in this, because God will bless our homes. He will be in this journey with us, and He will carry out His promise. Just as He brought about Rebekah into Isaac's life, listen, He will carry out His promise. I want us to see this happen. In our modern culture today, there are these three kind of areas of our life that are kind of level one when it comes to this topic. That if we really want to see God lead and protect and bless our homes, there are three particular areas that are kind of on the same playing field that we've got to start with before we go to level 2 or 3 in our house, in our households, in our family units, with our step kids or even with our blood kids. We've got to be pursuing these things. And friends, the very first area that I want us to kind of lean into in our modern culture that's so important for us is that we need to begin putting guardrails on our time. Listen, time, as many of us know, is the one thing that we all want more of but can never really get more of. It's the one thing that's constantly slipping through our fingers, that's moving past us, that we cannot earn more of. We have no idea how much more time we have on this planet and with the people around us, and yet we live lives where time is controlling us, where our calendars and our schedules control our lives. Have you ever felt like so busy? Like if you're adults, maybe you have kids, whatever the story may be, and you want to hang out with some friends, and you're like, okay, well, this month I'm booked. Next month, you know what? Let's shoot for next year. I think I'm good of July of next year. We should be able to hang out and go on a double date sometime. That would work for us. Like, right? Have you ever jokingly said that? Like, life feels so busy. Life feels chaotic. With the kids and all these sports and extracurricular activities, for us trying to get all this overtime at work, we're trying to work and work and work and work. And even if we're a business owner, we're trying to see our business thrive. And so we're pushing and pushing ourselves and pushing ourselves. And what's happening is that time is running away from us. And there are no guardrails on how we control or take care of the time that we have with our kids while they're in the house. Now that, of course, Aaron and I have a beautiful 2-year-old boy, we hear from so many parents, they're small now, but you're going to blink and they're going to be older. Time. It's so important for us to get a grip on this because we only have so much of it now, and we can never get more. You see, one of the deepest serious problems in our adult life and in our life that we're actually really passing on to our kids or our grandkids or people around us is that we have a terrible tendency to overcommit in our life. We have a terrible tendency to overcommit and say yes to so many things, and we don't realize that when we say yes to things, we're saying no to something else. If I'm on a date with my wife and the phone rings, if I say yes to answering the phone, that means I'm saying no to my date with my wife. Do you understand? Are we on the same page with this? We continue to overcommit, and we overcommit, and we overcommit, and we say yes to so many things. So when we say yes to working more hours for our boss, we say no to family. When we say yes to taking work home with us, when we say yes to doing all of these things, we're saying no and no and no to our family. They frequently get put on the back burner. And we're passing that mentality off to our kids because in our culture, we get a little bit of pride from overworking. I don't know, we kind of jokingly say it, like we say, oh, you've been working? Like, I'm exhausted, I'm tired. And for some reason, there's some respect in that, like, oh, wow, he's a hard worker. Maybe it's just me that sees it. But we overcommit and we pass this off to our kids. And so they overcommit with sports, with band practice, with seeing friends every weekend or having friends over. They commit to so many things. They commit to having a job when they're in high school and all these things, which I'm not saying this is all wrong. These are not all wrong things. But we overcommit, and what happens is we say no to our family. And we say no to people who are around us. And we've got to make this adjustment, and we've got to simplify life. And we've got to start trimming the fat, the things in life that are holding us back from having meaningful time as a family. Listen, I'm not saying family movie night, which is important, right? We should have family movie nights. I know for us in our household, we love family movie nights. Anybody with me? Normally I take a nap during the movie. It's phenomenal, love it. But listen, those moments and that time is good, but listen, it's not a substitute for meaningful time with our kids. And we'll get to more of that in the next area of our life as I talk about here in a couple minutes. But listen, the dates that we go on with our spouse, if we just go to the movies all the time, listen, we can watch a movie at home or another time, but that is not a meaningful moment to connect. The reason why we feel so disconnected at the Thanksgiving dinner or at the Christmas dinner is because the other 365 days a year, we do not intentionally plan and control our schedule, and we do not book. We don't make appointments. We don't think about this in this way. We got to think of family time as extra time or free time. But it's not free time. It's intentional time. to be pouring into our kids, be connecting with our siblings, even if we're out of the house, frequently going back to see mom and dad or picking up the phone and calling home. And nowadays we're even able to video chat over our iPhones and different platforms that we're able to use. There's so many ways that we can communicate, but yet we don't intentionally create those times. And I'm guilty of this. I want you to know that I'm not like standing on a pedestal. I'm right here with you guys in this journey. But perhaps we need to start controlling our time and putting guardrails in our life with how we use and approach our time throughout the week. And we create meaningful moments to have board game night or to go fishing or to take a family bike ride, whatever it is. Literally talk. Or we choose to sit around the dinner table and have supper together instead of sitting in the living room watching TV. But to really create intentional moments where we connect with one another. Like, we've got to be serious about these things. If we're going to see God lead our homes and bless our homes and be in our kids' life, we need to learn how to say no for our kids. Because our students are going to want to say yes to everything. They're going to say yes to going over to their friend's house every weekend. They're going to want to say yes to their friends coming over. They want to say yes to signing up for sports, doing softball, doing soccer, football. They're wanting to say yes to all these things. They're wanting to say yes to all this stuff because that's what we're showing them to do. And we've got to step in and say, no, family is important. You need to be at youth group. You need to be with our family as we go out and do these things. When we go pick out a Christmas tree, you've got to be here with us. So often we don't want to be the bad guy, but we need to be the hero. And sometimes we appear to be the bad guy in the moment. But when we do these things and put guardrails to protect our family, listen, and create that intimacy, we'll be the hero in the long run. It's so important that we invest and pour ourselves into our family, the people who are around us, that we get a hold of our schedules again and we stop letting time get away from us and stop blinking, and then all of a sudden the kids are out of the house. Friends, another essential area that we've really got to begin putting our guardrails up that really that show our family that this is how we live and this is who we are, especially in the area in the realm of technology. Friend, there's a hilarious picture, Chloe, if we can kind of put this up for a moment. This is a cartoon with two people sitting by, and the caption is kind of hard to see in the very bottom, but it says, the development of the wireless telegraphy. Like, isn't that hilarious? Like, right? I mean, that is the picture, and if you can see in the top left corner, it was published on December 26th in 1906. And it says that this is the future. It's saying the forecast for 1907. Listen, 114 years ago, people knew what technology would do to human interaction and to our relationships. People knew how technology would come in and be a device that very literally separates us. Perhaps that picture is hilarious, but have you ever been at a restaurant and you look around the room at other couples who are dating? They're maybe not sitting there, do, but they have their phones out. And perhaps if you've never seen that, then maybe it's you. Technology is rapidly evolving. It's amazing. It's hilarious if we pause and think that just in the last 30 years, in the 1980s, this device, this invention came out that revolutionized music. This device came out that no longer people had to put pencils in and rewind cassettes. And it'd be compact, and it'd be in the shape of a donut, and it'd be just paper thin. That the invention of the CD came out, and people were just, oh my goodness, it's incredible. We put hours and hours and hours of music on this. It's phenomenal. But now here we are 30 years later, and it's pretty much almost irrelevant. As nowadays, nobody has CDs. I know some of us do, it's okay. But now we have music on our phones, and we can plug aux cables into our cars and listen to music that way. Did you know the very first CD player cost $900? Whew. Now we pay that for brand new phones. But it's crazy how technology has rapidly evolved, and it's wild to think that just in the last 10 years, in 2009, Redbox was invented. And it instantly, like overnight, put Blockbuster out of business. I remember when I was a youth pastor and I was sharing a story about going to Blockbuster, I had one of my sixth graders say, "What is Blockbuster?" Like, are you serious right now? Like, there used to be this place you'd go to that was called a movie store, and you would rent movies. Like, I had no idea. Like, before Redbox? Like, you're talking about Redbox, right? No, before Redbox. But now even within, like, it's only been 10 years, and now all of a sudden, Redbox is starting to fade out and dissolve because they recognize that people can now just rent movies online digitally. They don't have to leave the house. And so they're now preparing for that next major transition in that field. Technology is constantly progressing, and it's amazing, it's fascinating, but we've been ignoring the impact that it has on our humanity, and we've been a little ignorant on how it really affects our ability to build relationships. Because technology truly does dissolve our ability to build meaningful relationships. That is why many people in their 30s, the millennial generation, is kind of poor at building friendships. And even beneath them, people in their 20s and in their late teens, people in their Generation Z. Listen, perhaps you have grandchildren who are in high school or in college right now. Listen, Generation Z, who is terrible at being open and talking and communicating their feelings and expressing their pain and their anxiety and their pressures. Because listen, technology is robbing them of that capacity, and especially the generation in the last 9 years, Generation Alpha, starting in 2010 to right now, is going to be one of the worst generations to ever be able to communicate with another person, another human being. Like not texting, not phone call, not instant messaging, none of that stuff. Like having a verbal conversation, statistically, will be one of the worst generations to ever be able to hold a conversation. And maybe you're even seeing that at home when you ask your kids, "How was school today?" "It was fine." "What'd you learn?" "Nothing." It's why we see so many young people in their 30s, 20s, teens, and even younger than that, who feel so much anxiety because they don't know how to express it. They don't know how to process it and take care of it. And friends, it's so important for us to put guardrails in our home to take care of it and protect our family from technology. Listen, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist. Listen, AI is coming, it's going to take over the world. Like, no. The technology is amazing. But it has a serious impact on how we can relate with our kids. It has a serious impact with how our students can relate with other people. It's having some serious impacts, and it's so important. Listen, it's so important for us to realize these things and to put guardrails up in our home with devices, with tablets, with Chromebooks, all of these things. Listen, with social media, it is so important that we put guardrails up in our home to monitor, to check, and go behind our students in their cell phone activity and their device activity. It's so important. I realize the students right now are looking at me like, "Pastor Andre, stop talking. Like, just pray, end the sermon now." It's so important. Listen, I'm telling you, it's so important because it's been ruining us. It's been decaying us from the inside out. I promise you this. Because now, thanks to MySpace in 2003. Wow, we're really bringing out the history. All of a sudden, people's life, people's high school environments, their young age, all of a sudden it went from their close friend group and even the people in their own high school or people in their class to now being all over the world. And so now, the world is having such a loud voice in our students' life through social media and through phones because the world is so much bigger in their life. Now they're able to check online and they can compare themselves to so many more people and feel like they're not special, to feel like they're not good enough, they're not pretty enough. All of those things, when they feel like they're good at something, Well, they see online that somebody is a million times better than them, and it destroys them. Listen, we need to. I understand we don't be the bad guys, but we need to step up and be the heroes and defend our family. And we need to be the ones who say it's time to put our phones away. And it's time to put our devices in as we go to bed or as we sit around the dining room table. Listen, do you know that so many families don't even have a normal tradition? Like if we were to go back in time 30, 40 years ago and you'd sit around the dinner table, mom, dad, brother, sister, everybody would be sitting around. The dog would probably even have a seat too. You'd be sitting around the dinner table and you would talk and you would share about what's happening in life. People don't do that nowadays. People just sit in their chair with their phone. It's so important that when we gather together as a family, that we lock these devices away so we can have a meaningful time. And listen, it's going to be hard. It's gonna be like pulling teeth, I promise you. It's not going to be fun. Because even for us as adults, it's not fun. We don't like it. When Aaron and I first got married, for the very first year, we decided on our smartphones and get flip phones. Not the cool kind that like slid sideways and you have a keyboard. No, this is the kind that you have to push the same button 20 times, and you really hope you don't push it 21 times to go past the letter you're trying to get to. It's like, start over. We didn't like it. And we noticed that when we would sit in the car and drive places, we'd sit down, we pull out our phone, and we're like, oh, I can't do anything with this. So I just fold it and put it away. We'd be at the doctor's office, or we'd be on a date. We pull our phone out and open it up. Oh yeah, I can do Tetris, but that's it. Like, who wants to play that game? Just put it away. Even as adults, we don't like doing that. We don't like limiting ourselves and putting on guardrails with the technology in our devices, but we need to. Listen, if you're a grandparent, when the grandkids come over, I encourage you to have a box right by your front door that says, if you want grandma's cookies, put your phone here. If you want dinner, phone goes right here. It's not going to be fun at first. It's not going to be an easy transition. But when we start to put these guardrails in the realm of technology and say, this is who we are, we care more about the people in the room than the people on our phones, on social media. If we can create that atmosphere and that value in our family now, listen, it will radiate and it will continue to grow. Because when our kids have family of their own, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do the same thing. They're going to say, all right, phones go away. And imagine just in 15, 20 years, how far technology will be, right? I mean, imagine. I mean, just seriously, it'd be phenomenal. It'd be crazy to see how far technology has come in 20 years. But listen, if we create and embed that value now and say we want meaningful connection, we want meaningful conversation over texting people who are outside of this room, then we need to create that value now, create those guardrails that protect and defend that right now. And friends, a very important third realm in our family units that we've really got to put up some guardrails to protect is the area of trust. Like money, trust is extremely hard to earn and very easy to lose. Trust is the foundation of which we build our family units. And I understand perhaps we come from a childhood, we come from a family where there was a lot of distrust, where mom didn't trust dad with how he spent money, or dad didn't trust mom for how she was out shopping, or there's a lot of distrust, there's a lot of anxiety, and how people did not genuinely connect and trust each other. You grew up in a home possibly where you didn't even trust your siblings. You thought they were out to get you, that they never had your back. Listen, if we don't want that to carry into our family today, then we need to put guardrails up. We need to implement values that say this is who we are. We are a family who loves each other. We are a family who respects each other. We show unconditional love to one another because all of those together build trust. And if anyone comes in, or if anyone from within tries to go against and break that trust, then we correct it as serious as it is punching someone in the face. We are a family that encourages one another. And so if you are constantly tearing down your sibling, then you're grounded. No phone. If you're constantly ignoring your family, people who are around you, or even if you have siblings who come in, if you're an adult and you see that your siblings come in and to that holiday festival, the holiday, the feast. And there's gossip. And there's rumors being spread. And there's lying that's being just swirled all around. Listen, it's up to us to stand up and say, listen, we're not going to tolerate this. Because we're a family that trusts each other, even with our extended family. We're not going to tolerate the bullying that's happening. We're not going to tolerate the favoritism that's expressed from our parents to our kids. It's a tough subject. We're not going to tolerate this. We put guardrails and values in place and stand by them and say, this is who we are. And friends, next week, our sermon, the conversation next Sunday is going to be a lot about how do we identify those unhealthy behaviors in our family and how do we talk about them. Listen, that's all next Sunday, but listen, it's so important for us to realize to start now on level 1 before we can go to the level 2. We've got to be all about building trust, that everything we do and how we interact with one another and how we treat one another builds trust. Because if you want to be an adult, listen, who can really lead your students and really have that relationship with them, then you've got to be about building trust by loving them and being there for them and listening and really not trying to correct them or degrade them, but to listen and to encourage and push them forward and upward. Listen, if we want to see trust bloom in our homes again, we've got to be serious about putting walls, thick, giant walls, say, this is who we are, this is how we live. We are not going to tolerate the hurt. We're not going to tolerate the things that tear us apart. We're going to move forward and we're going to build trust. Friends, it's so important in all of these areas of time and technology and trust for us to be very serious, putting up guardrails to protect our home, to defend it against the enemy who's trying his hardest to destroy our family. You realize that's his number one goal. When you wake up in the morning, you think, oh, I can't wait to go to work, can't wait to see my wife, can't wait to have fun with my kids today. When you wake up in the morning, that's what you think about. Listen, when he wakes up, he's like, I can't wait to see whose life I ruined today. I can't wait to see if I can wedge that teenage daughter away from her mom and dad. I can't wait. I hope I can do that today. You realize that that's his goal every single day. That's what he is trying to do in your kid's life, in your life, in your greater extended family's life every single day. We've got to be serious. We've got to move forward in this marathon. It's not a sprint. We've got to move forward in this marathon of putting up guardrails to protect and defend our family so we can see God blossom in our kids' hearts. So we can see real love pour over like a fountain in our family tree. Wouldn't it be amazing? Let's do this.